Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also known as BrightShine. I live right here in the city of Memphis. It's in the county sheriff, state of Tennessee. Today's date is Sunday afternoon, March the 23rd, 2025. Time 2:01 p.m. First thing, thank you, my family, my support for you. Continue, encourage, support, continue. Keep myself employed in the administration area. Continue further my education, more work online. Continue to pursue my social degree. Not be administrative, contract, market, present time. Took a break and going to school. In the future, I'm gonna go back to school, and I'm gonna earn my associate degree as well as other degrees. Now, I'm gonna start my Facebook Live. Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also known as BrightShine. Right here in the city of Memphis, county sheriff, state of Tennessee. Today's date is Sunday afternoon, March the 23rd, 2025. Time 2:02 p.m. First thing, thank you, my family, my support for you. Continue, encourage, support, continue. Keep myself employed in the administrative area. Continue further my education, more work online. Continue to pursue my social media. Study being administrative, contract, marketing. At the present time, took a break and going to school. In the future, I'm gonna go back to school, earn my social degree, well, other degree. Excuse me. And on today's video, I'm gonna be about an hour. Started, one of my intentions started at 2 in the afternoon, but still, I'm gonna make my video, and what I'm gonna do today for about an hour. All right, we're gonna go back to prehistoric religion. Then we ended off on atheism. So what I'm gonna do, we're gonna spend just a minute, just a small amount of time on atheism. So I'm finna go to atheism. Cause see, the PhD already told you it's for religion. It's for religion. Monotheism, polytheism, animism, and atheism. So we ain't gonna spend too much time on atheism. We want to just make some points. Cause I'm not no supporter of atheism. Now we're going to Wikipedia now. The PhD already online. About citations, footnotes / notes, references, and sources. So we online. All right, we on Wikipedia. Quick reference. I'm scrolling all the way down to the bottom where you got notes, references, sources and further reading. All right. I'm going back up to the top. We're on Wikipedia. Like I said, we're not going to spend too much time on it. We're just going to touch bases on this atheist. All right. Atheism, in the broadest sense, is an absence of belief in the existence of deities. Less broadly, atheism is a rejection of the belief that any deities exist. Like I said, I'm not a supporter of atheism. You know, I'm a aspiring Catholic myself. So, like I said, we're just gonna touch bases on this atheist because there's something we get into, like the origin of this atheism. We point in a direction. You know, we said we point in a direction where it came. Where it originated. In an even narrow sense, atheism is specifically the position that there are no deities. Atheism is contrasted with theism. Now, theism is broadly defined as the belief in the existence of at least one deity. In common parlance, or when contrasted with deism, the term often describes the philosophical conception of God that is found in classical theism. All right, so theism, which is the belief that at least one deity exists. So I'm still reading in the same paragraph number, the second paragraph. Historically, evidence of atheistic viewpoints can be traced back to classical antiquity and early Indian philosophy. In the Western world, atheism declined after Christianity gained prominence. The 16th century and the Age of Enlightenment marked the resurgence of atheistic thought in Europe. Atheism achieved a significant position worldwide in the 12th century. Estimates of those who have an absence of belief in a God range from 500 million to 1.1 billion people. Atheist organizations have defended the autonomy of science, freedom of thought, secular ethics, and secularism. And arguments for atheism range from philosophical to social approaches. Rationales for not believing in deities include the lack of evidence, the problem of evil, the argument from inconsistent revelations, the rejection of concepts that cannot be falsified, and the argument from non-belief. Non-believers contend that atheism is a more parsimonious position than theism and that everyone is born without beliefs in deities. Therefore, they argue that the burden of proof lies not on the atheist to disprove the existence of God, but on the theist to provide a rationale for theism. All right. Now we're going to touch on this then. Definition. Writers disagree on how best to define and classify atheism, contesting what supernatural entities are considered gods, whether atheism is a philosophical position or merely the absence of one, and whether it requires a conscious, explicit rejection. However, the norm is to define atheism in terms of an explicit stance against theism. Atheism has been regarded as compatible with agnosticism. So let me put the cursor on agnosticism. Agnosticism is the view or belief that the existence of God, the divine, or the supernatural is either unknowable in principle or unknown in fact. It can also mean an apathy towards such religious belief and refer to personal limitations rather than a worldview. okay, but has also been contrasted with it. So we have implicit versus explicit. So some of the ambiguity involved in defining atheism arises from the definition of words like deity and God. The variety of widely different conceptions of God and deities lead to different ideas regarding atheism applicability. The ancient Romans accused Christians of being atheists for not worshiping the pagan deities. Gradually, this view fell into disfavor as atheism came to be understood as encompassing belief in any divinity. With respect to the range of phenomena being rejected, atheism may encounter anything from the existence of a deity to the existence of any spiritual, supernatural, or transcendental concepts. Definitions of atheism also vary in the degree of consideration a person must put to the idea of gods to be considered an atheist. Atheism has been defined as the absence of belief that any deities exist. This broad definition would include newborns and other people who have not been exposed to theistic ideas. As far back as 1772, Baron de Holbach said that all children are born atheists. They have no idea of God. Similarly, George A. Smith suggested that the man who is unacquainted with theism is an atheist because he does not believe in a God. This category will also include the child with the conceptual capacity to grasp the issues involved, but who is still unaware of those issues. The fact that this child does not believe in God qualifies him as an atheist. Implicit atheism is the absence of theistic belief without a conscious rejection of it. And explicit atheism is the conscious rejection of belief. It is unusual to define atheism in terms of an explicit stance against theism. For the purposes of his paper on philosophical atheism, Ernest Nagel contested included the mere absence of theistic belief as a type of atheism. Graham Oppy classifies as innocents those who never consider the question because they lack any understanding of what a God is. For example, 1-month-old babies. Now, then we got positive versus negative. All right, we're going to touch on this positive versus negative. All right, philosophers such as Anthony Flew and Michael Martin have contrasted positive, strong, hard atheism with negative, weak, soft atheism. Positive atheism is the explicit affirmation that gods do not exist. Negative atheism includes all other forms of non-theism. According to this categorization, anyone who is not a theist is either a negative or a positive atheist. Michael Martin, for example, asserts that agnosticism entails negative atheism, as Gnostic theism, you put the cursor on that. Now, this agnostic theism or atheistic agnosticism is a philosophical position that encompasses both atheism and agnosticism. As Gnostic atheists are atheistic because they do not hold a belief in the existence of any deity, and they are agnostic because they claim that the existence of a divine entity or entity is either unknowable in principle or currently unknown in fact. And then it says that agnostic atheists may be contrasted with the agnostic theist who believes that one or more deities exist but claims that the existence or non-existence of such entity is unknown or cannot be known. All right, so I'm going to click back. All right. And so agnostic atheism encompasses both atheism and agnosticism. However, many agnostics see their view as distinct from atheism. According to atheist arguments, unproven religious propositions deserve as much disbelief as all other unproven propositions. Atheist criticism of as agnosticism says that the unprovability of a God's existence does not imply an equal probability of either possibility. And Australian philosopher J.C. Smart argues that sometimes a person who is really an atheist may describe herself even passionately as an agnostic because of unreasonable generalized philosophical skepticism, which would preclude us from saying that we know anything whatever, except perhaps the truths of mathematics and formal logic. Consequently, some atheist authors, such as Richard Dawkins, prefer distinguishing theist, agnostic, and atheist position along a spectrum of theistic probability, the likelihood that each assigns to the statement God exists. Before the 18th century, the existence of God was so accepted in the Western world that even the possibility of true atheism was questioned. This is called theistic innatism, the notion that all people believe in God from birth. Within this view was the connotation that atheists are in denial. Some atheists have challenged the need for the term atheism. In his book, Letter to a Christian Nation, Sam Harris wrote, "In fact, atheism is a term that should not even exist. No one ever needs to identify himself as a non-astrologer or a non-alchemist. We do not have words for people who doubt that Elvis is still alive or that aliens have traversed the galaxy only to molest ranchers and their cattle. Atheism is nothing more than the noises reasonable people make in the presence of unjustified religious beliefs." Okay, so let me scroll down. To history. History. Early Indian religions. Ideas that would be recognized today as atheistic are documented in the Vedic period. All right, let me put the curse on it. On the Vedic period. The Vedic period, or the Vedic age, is the period in the late Bronze Age. We're going to get on that. And early Iron Age. Now, the Bronze Age, don't forget, when we talk about prehistoric religion, when you talk about bronze, before bronze, it was what? Copper. And so we talking about the Paleolithic and Neolithic, and in the middle is that Mesolithic, like the Ice Age and all that. So so when you hear things like that, you be familiar with it. So we say the late Bronze Age and early Iron Age of the history of India, when the Vedic literature, including the Vedas, was composed in the northern Indian subcontinent between the end of the urban Indus Valley civilization and a second urbanization which began, let me click over that right quick, which began in the central Indo-Gangetic plain. Now we talking about that time period, they talking about like 1500 to 500 BCE. That's the late Bronze Age and early Iron Age of the history of India, and including the Vedas, which is around 1500, 900 BCE. And then when they talk about this Indo-Gangetic plain, they talking about 600 BCE, and saying that the Vedas are liturgical texts which form the basis of the influential Brahmanical ideology, which developed in the Kuru Kingdom, a tribal union of several Indo-Aryan tribes. Let me click on that. Now, this is a list of ancient Indo-Aryan peoples. So, when you talk about this Indo-Aryan peoples, they are a diverse collection of peoples predominantly found in South Asia, who traditionally speak Indo-Aryan languages. And the Indo-Aryan languages, or sometimes Indic languages, are a branch of the Indo-Iranian language in the Indo-European language. So historical Aryans were the Indo-Iranian speaking pastoralists who migrated from Central Asia into South Asia and introduced the Proto-Indo-Aryan languages. The early Indo-Aryan peoples were known to be closely related to the Indo-Iranian group that have resided north of the Indus River, an evident connection in cultural, linguistic, and historical ties. Today, Indo-Aryan speakers are found south of the Indus, across the modern-day regions of Bangladesh, Nepal, eastern Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and northern India. All right, so let me click back. All right, so we developed in the Kuru Kingdom a tribal union of several Indo-Aryan tribes. The Vedas contain details of life during this period that have been interpreted to be historical and constitute the primary source for understanding the period. These documents, alongside the corresponding archaeological records, allow for the evolution of the Indo-Aryan and Vedic culture to be traced and inferred. All right. All right, let me get back up here. Now, the Vedas were composed and orally transmitted with precision by speakers of an old Indo-Aryan language who had migrated into the northwestern regions of the Indian subcontinent early in this period. The Vedic society was patriarchal and patrilineal. Now, early Indo-Aryans were a late Bronze Age society centered in the Punjab, organized into tribes rather than kingdoms, and primarily sustained by a pastoral way of life. So we just wanted to touch base on that. So we looking at, see, we got to go in this direction. So we looking in the direction of this atheism. So you seeing, you got some Indo-European history involved. All right, so we go back. Let me see. Atheism. Okay, yeah. The history, early Indian religion. So All right, so the Vedic period and the classical antiquity. Saying that ideals that would be recognized today as atheist. So we talking about some ideals that would be recognized today as atheistic are documented in the Vedic period. And what else? And the classical antiquity. So I'm going to click over there right quick. Classical antiquity, also known as the classical era, classical period, classical age, or simply antiquity, is the period of cultural European history between the 8th century BC and the 5th century AD, comprising the interwoven civilizations of ancient Greece and ancient Rome, known together as the Greco-Roman world. Centered on the Mediterranean basin, it is the period during which ancient Greece and ancient Rome flourished and had major influence throughout much of Europe, North Africa, and West Asia. Now it says conventionally it is often considered to begin with the earliest recorded epic Greek poetry of Homer around the 8th, 7th centuries BC and end with the end of the Western Roman Empire in 476 AD. Such a wide span of history and territory covers many disparate cultures and periods. Classical antiquity may also refer to an idealized vision among later people of what was, in Edgar Allan Poe's words, the glory that was Greece and the grandeur that was Rome. And so, the culture of the ancient Greeks, together with some influence from the ancient Near East, was the basis of art, philosophy, society, and education in the Mediterranean and Near East until the Roman imperial period. The Romans preserved, imitated, and spread this culture throughout Europe until they were able to compete with it. This Greco-Roman cultural foundation has been immensely influential on the language, politics, law, educational system, philosophy, science, warfare, literature, historiography, ethics, rhetoric, art, and architecture of both the Western and throughout the modern world. Surviving fragments of classical culture helped produce a revival beginning during the 14th century, which later came to be known as the Renaissance. And various neoclassical revivals occurred during the 18th and 19th century. So, that's classical antiquity. So we're dealing with this atheism, and we're not going to spend too much more time on, but we just want to get a foundation on what direction did, so we're getting an idea, we're getting a basis. We're getting a basis for what such an idea, because it says what? Ideas that were recognized today, that would be recognized today as atheism. So the idea, we looking in that direction, the basis for atheism. Now, atheistic schools are found in early Indian thought and has existed from the times of the historical Vedic religion. So, atheistic schools, they were teaching this atheism in early Indian thought and have existed from the times of the historical Vedic religion. So let me click over there. This historical Vedic religion. Now, the historical Vedic religion, also called Vedicism or Vedism, and sometimes ancient Hinduism or Vedic Hinduism, constitute the religious ideas and practices prevalent among some of the Indo-Aryan peoples of the Northwest Indian subcontinent, Punjab, and the Western Ganges Plain. During the Vedic period, 1500 to 500 BC, these ideas and practices are found in the Vedic texts and some Vedic rituals are still practiced today. The Vedic religion is one of the major traditions which shaped modern Hinduism, though present-day Hinduism is significantly different from the historical Vedic religion. And that the Vedic religion has roots in the Indo-Iranian culture. All right, we're gonna click on that Indo-Iranian. So the Indo-Iranian peoples, also known as Arya or Aryans or Aryans, from their self-designation, were a group of Indo-European speaking peoples who brought the Indo-Iranian languages to parts of Europe, Central Asia, and South Asia in waves from the first part of the second millennium BC onwards. They eventually branched out into the Iranian peoples and Indo-Aryan peoples. Now, when you come to talk about this nomenclature, the term Aryan has long been used to denote the Indo-Iranians because Arya was the self-designation of the ancient speakers of the Indo-Iranian languages, specifically the Iranian and the Indo-Aryan peoples, collectively known as the Indo-Iranians. Despite this, some scholars use the term Indo-Iranian to refer to this group, though the term Aryan remains widely used by most scholars such as Joseph Weiser, also blah, 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 blah. In his 1994 book, The History and Geography of Human Genes, also used the term Aryan to describe the Indo-Iranians. Now, we're going to touch on this history because we want to listen to this. All right, the history, the origin. The Proto-Indo-Iranians are commonly identified with the descendants of the Indo-Europeans known as the Sintashta culture. The Sintashta culture is I put the curse on that, is a Middle Bronze Age archaeological culture of the southern Urals, dated to the period 2200 or 1900 BC. It is the first phase of the Sintashta Petrovka complex. The culture is named after the Sintashta archaeological site. It said the culture is named after the Sintashta archaeological site in Chelyabinsk Oblast, Russia, and spreads through Orenburg Oblast, Bashkortostan, and northern Kazakhstan, widely regarded as the origin of the Indo-Iranian languages, whose speakers originally referred to themselves as the Aryans. The Sintashta culture is thought to represent an eastward migration of peoples from the corded ware culture. Now, the corded ware culture comprised the broad archaeological horizon of Europe between 3000 BC and 2350 BC, thus from the late Neolithic through the Copper Age, and ending in the early Bronze Age. Corded ware culture encompasses a vast area from the contact zone between the Yamnaya culture and the corded ware culture in South Central Europe to the Rhine in the west and the Volga in the east, occupying parts of Northern Europe, Central Europe, and Eastern Europe. Autosome genetic studies suggest that the corded ware culture originated from the westward migration of Yamnaya-related people from the steep forest zone into the territory of late Neolithic European cultures, evolving in parallel with, although under significant influence from, the Yamnaya. While the idea of direct male line descent between them has not received significant support yet, IBD sharing between the population of these two cultures indicate that at the very least they came from a recent common ancestor. The Harvard Magazine article on the find referring to them as cousins who were biologically separated but only a few hundred years. And said the corded were culture is considered to be a likely vector for the spread of many of the Indo-European languages in Europe and Asia. And see, a lot of this information is based on archaeology. So that's the reason why, the behavior science class, the behavior science department, you got anthropology and archaeology. And then we have, DNA and all this. But a lot of this information, that when they say corded ware culture, this is what it's really talking about. It's talking about archaeology. And how the archaeologists have been digging in the ground. They've been finding burials and all these tools and all these stuff from ancient people, information that's been buried in the ground. Buried in the ground, then it get discovered, and that's what the word corded ware culture is referring to. It's referring to objects that have been buried in the ground, and they had these corded like impressions or ornamentation on objects. But the point is this: archaeology, the behavior science department is important. The PhD and all, that's the reason why it's important. All right, so let me click back over. And see, this is the reason why we're doing this. Is the reason why I'm doing this, because we looking in that direction. We getting a basis for the direction that you're talking about. This atheist. And so you're looking at this direction. You see how archaeologists been digging, talking about the Paleolithic, the Neolithic, and even the Chalcolithic. That's like Indo-European. We're gonna get on that, But and they've been talking about finding all these burials and talking about classifying all these bones they find, Homo erectus and like Homo sapiens and all the other ones before, the Neanderthals, and how the Neanderthals possibly died out. You know what I'm saying? And all the other Heidelberg and all this. So we looking in that direction. See, when we talking about prehistoric religion, we touched on this last week. The very first thing they said is like 99.9% of human history is in the Paleolithic time frame. And saying that polytheistic religion possibly was dominant. Polytheistic beliefs was dominant. Paleolithic, then you get into Neolithic, then you start talking about ancestral worship from your direct ancestor to your tribe, clan, whatever, worship. So we looking at this atheist. Okay, syntactical culture and all these different names they claim, it really is archaeological digs. And they saying that they've been digging in the ground in all these locations. And they finding all this information in the ground. So we're looking at Indo-Iranians, and then what we the origin. So Simtasha culture and subsequent Andronova culture within the broader Andronova horizon in their homeland within an area of the Eurasian steppe that borders the Ural River on the west, the Tian Shan on the east, where the Indo-Iranians took over the area occupied by the earlier Afro-Sivo culture. And the Transylvania and the Hindu Kush on the south. All right. So we're looking at historical Vedic religion. So we wanted to make sure we touch on that since Syntasha and Andronova cultures of Eurasian steppe, this Indo-Iranian religion borrowed distinctive religious beliefs and practices from the non-Indo-Aryan Bactria Margiana culture. And let me click on that. All right, the Bactria Margiana archaeological complex is the modern archaeological designation for a particular Middle Bronze Age civilization of Southern Central Asia, also known as the Oxus civilization. The civilization urban phase or integration era was dated in 2010 by Sandro Salvatore, circa 2400 1950 BC, but a different view is held by Nadeza A. Dubova and Bertal Lanet. Though it may be called the Oxus civilization, apparently centered on the upper Amu Darya, the Oxus River in Bactria. And that was Bactria or Bactriana was an ancient Iranian civilization in Central Asia based in the area south of the Oxus River and north of the mountains of the Hindu Kush, an area within the north of modern Afghanistan. Bactria was strategically located south of Sagdia in the western part of the Pamir Mountains, and saying that most of BMAC's urban sites are actually located in Margiana, modern Turkmenistan, on the Murghab River Delta, and in the Kopet Dagh mountain range. There are a few later 1950 to 1450 BC sites in northern Bactria, currently known as southern Uzbekistan, but they are mostly graveyards belonging to the BMAC related Sapali culture. A single BMAC site known as Dashli lies in southern Bactria, currently territory of northern Afghanistan. And then you have sites found further east in southwestern Tajikistan, though contemporary with the main BMAC sites in Margiana are only graveyards with no urban developments associated with them. And saying that the civilization was named BMAC by Soviet archaeologist Viktor Saryandi in 1976 during the period 1969-1979 when he was excavating in northern Afghanistan. Saryandi's excavations from the late 1970s on revealed numerous monumental structures in many sites, fortified by impressive walls and gates. Reports on the BMAC were mostly confined to Soviet journals. A journalist from the New York Times wrote in 2001 that during the years of the Soviet Union, the findings were largely unknown to the West until Saryandi's work began to be translated in the 1990s. However, some publications by Soviet authors like Massin, Saryandi, Antigariev, and Berdiev have been available to the West, translated in the first half of 1970, slightly before Saryandi labeled the findings as BMAC. And so, Italian archaeologists like Massimo Vidali and Denis Frenzian support Sandro Salvatore's hypothesis that the Mazga Fifth is the beginning of the ultimate urban phase called BMAC, belonging to the integration era, 2400 to 1950 BC. On the other hand, Russian and French archaeologists, Nadezhda and Dubova and Bertal-Lainet, considered there was a gap between the end of the Mazga, the third phase, and the beginning of BMC in Margiana, and that most of the sites, both in Margiana and Bactria, were founded on virgin soil only around 2250 BC, lasting until 1700 BC. All right. Okay, so let me click back over. All right, so where was it? Okay, that's where I was at. Of South Central Asia, when pastoral Indo-Aryan tribes stayed there as a separate people in the early second millennium BCE. From the BMAC, Indo-Aryan tribes migrated to the northwestern region of the Indian subcontinent, and the Vedic religion developed there. During the early Vedic period, 1500 to 1100 BCE, as a variant of Indo-Aryan religion. And it said it was influenced by the remnants of the late Indus Valley civilization, 2600 to 1900 BC. Okay, let me read this. During the late Vedic period, 1100 to 500 BC, Brahmanism developed out of the Vedic religion as an ideology of the Kuru Panchala realm, which expanded into a wider area after the demise of the Kuru Panchala realm and the domination of the non-Vedic Magadha cultural spirit. Brahmanism was one of the major influences that shaped contemporary Hinduism when it was synthesized with the non-Vedic Indo-Aryan religious heritage of the eastern Ganges plain, which also gave rise to Buddhism and Jainism, and with local religious traditions. And specific rituals and sacrifices of the Vedic religion include, among others, the Some rituals, fire rituals involving oblations, Havir, and the Ashvamedha horse sacrifice. The rites of grave burials as well as cremation are seen since the Vedic period. The deities emphasized in the Vedic religion include Dyaus, Indra, Igni, Rudra, and Varuna, and important ethical concepts include Satya and Arte. So, we're getting a historical basis for atheism. What time is it? Okay. Like I said, we're not trying to spend a whole lot of time. We're trying to get a basis, and we're looking at the historical basis for atheism. So we're looking in that direction. So we got an idea. Oh, it's coming from that point of It's coming from, because the behavior science department, hey, all over we talking about the Paleolithic, prehistoric religion now. Prehistoric religion, then we get to this. And all over the world, so we talking about prehistoric religion, we talking about coming out of Africa, the theory of coming out of Africa. Because only thing we doing is digging in the ground. When I say we as human beings, our scientists, digging in the ground for a lot of information. Now we got oceanographers and climatologists that study the atmosphere, but a lot of information we digging in the ground, and geologists, they study the earth and how the earth moves and all this and blah 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 blah. As well as, like I said, the meteorologists, study the atmosphere and all this, So we getting a base, we looking in a certain direction, this atheist. And then a group of people related to the Indo-Aryan, related to the Indo-European, who derived from the Indo-European, this Indo-Aryan, Indo-Iranian. So it's coming from that direction. All right. So when you click back over, like in the times of the historical Vedic religion, and then among the 6 orthodox schools of Hindu philosophy, Samkhya, the oldest philosophical school of thought, does not accept God. In the early Mimamsa also rejected the notion of God. Now, when you say that, God, and then you say, don't accept the existence of God, and you reject the notion of God. See, this reason why they classify it as a religion. Because you include that. This is one of the reasons why they get classified as a God, as a religion. You got all this ritual stuff and all this, But one of the things, when you say does not exist, God. See, historically, gods, polytheism, the scientists all over the world saying that, based on information available, what they say, 99%, 99.9%, a large amount of, history is Paleolithic history about prehistoric religion. And when you get to a certain period, coming out of the, you got what they classify as upper, middle, and the whole Paleolithic broke down into like lower Paleolithic, middle Paleolithic, and upper Paleolithic. Then you come into Neolithic. Then you have this glacier age, the ice age, and all this, the Mesolithic age. And then you throw another age in there, the Chalcolithic age. And it's really about this Indo-European. So, the thoroughly materialistic and anti-theistic philosophical Chavaka, or Lakyata, a school that originated in India around the 6th century BC, is probably the most explicitly atheistic school of philosophy in India, similar to the Greek Syrianic school. This branch of Indian philosophy is classified as heterodox due to its rejection of the authority of Vedas, and hence is not considered part of the 6 orthodox schools of Indian philosophy. It is noteworthy as evidence of a materialistic movement in ancient India. And Satyachandra Chatterjee and Dr. explain an introduction to Indian philosophy, and that our understanding of Chavaka philosophy is fragmentary, based largely on criticism of the ideas by other schools. Though materialism in some form or other has always been present in India, and occasional references are found in the Vedas, the Buddhistic literature, the epics, as well as in later philosophical works, we do not find any systemic work on materialism, nor any organized school of followers as the other philosophical schools possess. But almost every work of the other schools states, for refutation, the materialistic views. Our knowledge of Indian materialism is chiefly based on these. Other Indian philosophies generally regarded as atheistic include classical Samkhya and Purva Mamasa. The rejection of a personal creator, God, is also seen in Jainism and Buddhism in India. Now, when we get to classical antiquity, all right, we want to get on this. We want to make sure we touch on this. Western atheism has its roots in pre-Socratic Greek philosophy. So put the curse on that. Pre-Socratic philosophy, also known as early Greek philosophy, is ancient Greek philosophy before Socrates. Pre-Socratic philosophers were mostly interested in cosmology, the beginning and the substance of the universe. But the inquiries of these early philosophers span the workings of the natural world as well as human society, ethics, and religion. They sought explanation based on natural law rather than the actions of gods. Their work and writing has been almost entirely lost. Knowledge of their views comes from testimonia. Later authors' discussions of the work of pre-Socratics. Philosophy found fertile ground in the ancient Greek world because of the close ties with neighboring civilizations and the rise of autonomous civil entities, poli. And so pre-Socratic philosophy began in the 6th century BC with the three Milesians, Thales, Anaximander, and Anaximenes. They all attributed the arc, a word that could take the meaning of origin, substance, or principle, of the world to respectively water, everything, the unlimited, and air. Another three pre-Socratic philosophers came from nearby Ionian towns: Xenophanes, Heraclitus, and Pythagoras. Xenophanes is known for his critique of the anthropomorphism of gods. Heraclitus, who was notoriously difficult to understand, is known for his maxim on impermanence, Lepantry, and for attributing fire to be the arc of the world. Pythagoras created a cult-like following that advocated that the universe was made up of numbers. The elliptic school, Parmenides, Zeno of Elea, and Melissus, followed in the 5th century BC. Parmenides claimed that only one thing exists and nothing can change. Zeno Melissus mainly defended Parmenides' opinion. And Anaxagoras and Empedocles offered a pluralistic account of how the universe was created. Leucippus and Democritus are known for their atomism and their view that only void and matter exist. The sophists advanced philosophical relativism. The pre-Socratics have had significant impact on several concepts of Western philosophy, such as naturalism and rationalism, and paved the way for scientific methodology. Okay, let me click back over. All right. Greek philosophy. Ancient Greek philosophy arose in the 6th century BC. Philosophers were used to make sense of the world using reason. It dealt with a wide variety of subjects, including astronomy, epistemology, mathematics, political philosophy, ethics, metaphysics, ontology, logic, biology, rhetoric, and aesthetics. Greek philosophy continued throughout the Hellenistic period and later evolved into Roman philosophy. Greek philosophy has influenced much of Western culture since its inception and can be found in many aspects of public education. Alfred North Whitehead once claimed the safest general characterization of the European philosophical tradition is that it consists of a series of footnotes to Plato. Clear, unbroken lines of influence lead from ancient Greek and Hellenistic philosophers to Roman philosophy, early Islamic philosophy, medieval scholasticism, the European Renaissance, and the Age of Enlightenment. Greek philosophy was influenced to some extent by the older wisdom literature and mythological cosmogonies of the ancient Near East. Let me click over there right quick. Wisdom literature is a genre of literature common in the ancient Near East. It consists of statements by sages and the wise that offer teachings about divinity and virtue. Although this genre uses techniques of traditional oral storytelling, it was disseminated into written form. The earliest known wisdom literature dates back to the middle of the 3rd millennium BC, originating from ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt. These regions continued to produce wisdom literature over the subsequent 2.5 millennia. Wisdom literature from Jewish, Greek, Chinese, and Indian culture started appearing around the middle of the 1st millennium BC. In the 1st millennium AD, Egyptian Greek wisdom literature emerged, some elements of which were later incorporated into Islamic thought. Much of the wisdom literature can be broadly characterized into two types: conservative, positive wisdom, and critical, negative wisdom or vanity literature. Conservative positive wisdom, pragmatic real world advice about proper behavior and actions, attaining success in life, living a good and fulfilling life, etc. Examples of this genre include Book of Proverbs, the instructions of Shurapic, and first part of Sema Micah. Critical negative wisdom, also called vanity literature or wisdom in protest, a more pessimistic outlook, frequently expressing skepticism about the scope of human achievements, highlighting the inevitability of mortality, advocating the rejection of all material gains, and expressing the carpe diem view that since nothing has intrinsic value, vanity theme, and all will come to an end, memento mori theme. Therefore, one should just enjoy life to the fullest while they can. Carpe diem theme. Examples of this genre include Ecclesiastes, the Battle of Early Rulers, Enlil, and Nemstiara. The second part of Sema, Milcah, the son's response, and Nicknam, Nukal. Nothing is of value. Another common genre is extensive works that deal with the relationship between man and God, divine reward and punishment, theodicy, the problem of evil, and why bad things happen to good people. The protagonist is a just sufferer, a good person beset by tragedy, who tries to understand his lot in life. The most well-known example is the Book of Job. However, it was preceded by and likely based on earlier Mesopotamian works such as the Babylonian Theodicy, sometimes called the Babylonian Job, Ludlow Bell, Namiki, I will praise the Lord of wisdom, or the poem of the righteous sufferer, dialogue between a man and his God, and the Sumerian man and his God. The literary genre of Mirrors for Princes, which has a long history in the Islamic and Western Renaissance literature, is a secular cognate of wisdom literature. In classical antiquity, the didactic poetry of Hesiod, particularly his works and days, was regarded as a source of knowledge similar to the Western literature, similar to the wisdom literature of Egypt, Babylonia, and Israel. Pre-Islamic poetry is replete with many poems of wisdom, including the poetry of Zuyar bin Abi Sumay, 520 and 609. Okay, so that's what wisdom literature. So Greek philosophy was influenced to some extent by older wisdom literature and mythological cosmogonies of the ancient Near East. Though the extent of this influence is widely debated, the classical Martin Nickfield West states contact with Oriental cosmology and theology helped to liberate the early Greek philosophers' imagination. It certainly gave them many suggestive ideas, but they taught themselves to reason. Philosophy, as we understand it, is a Greek creation. Subsequent philosophical tradition was so influenced by Socrates and presented by Plato that it is conventional to refer to philosophy developed prior to Socrates as pre-Socratic philosophy. The periods following this up to and after the wars of Alexander the Great are those of classical Greek and Hellenistic philosophy, respectively. So, like I said, when we deal with this atheism, you coming into the direction where it's coming from. So, let me click back over to classical antiquity. Western atheism has its roots in pre-Socratic Greek philosophy, but atheism in the modern sense was extremely rare in ancient Greece. Pre-Socratic atomists such as Democritus attempted to explain the world in a purely materialistic way and interpreted religion as a human reaction to natural phenomena, but did not explicitly deny that gods exist. Anaxagoras, whom Irenaeus called the atheist, was accused of impiety and condemned for stating that the sun is a type of incandescent stone, an affirmation with which he tried to deny the divinity of the celestial bodies. In the late 5th century BCE, the Greek lyric poet Diagoras of Milos was sentenced to death in Athens under the charge of being a godless person, after he made fun of the Lucinian mysteries, but he fled the city to escape punishment. In post-classical antiquity, philosophers such as Cicero and Sextus Empiricus described Diagoras as an atheist who categorically denied the existence of the gods. But in modern scholarship, Merrick Winnicek has defended the view that Diagoras was not an atheist in the modern sense in the view that has proved influential. On the other hand, the verdict has been challenged by Tim Whitmarsh, who argues that Diagoras rejected the gods on the basis of the problem of evil. And this argument was in turn alluded to in Euripides' fragmentary play Bellerophon, a fragment from a lost Attic drama that featured Sisyphus, which has been attributed to both Crassus and Euripides, claimed that a clever man invented the fear of the gods in order to frighten people into behaving morally. So we see that there's a direction, Indo-European, Indo-Aryan. So we see that there's a direction for this atheism, for this philosophy. It's Greek, about reason. So we see now, historically, that there's a basis for this atheism. When we talk about, so like I said, it wasn't my intent to spend, but we was getting to the basis. So now we got a basis. So now we see that the direction it's coming from the Indo-European. It's coming from that direction. That's where it's coming from. Now, before I end today's video, we're going to click back over. We're going to go back to prehistoric religion. And then before I end today's video, we're going to touch base on polytheism. We're going to touch base on shamanism and animism. Because like the PhD already told you, there's only 4 religions. Only 4. Monotheism, polytheism, animism, and atheism. There's only 4. So we're gonna touch base. We're gonna go back to prehistoric religion. Now, when we say prehistoric religion, we click back over to Wikipedia. Now, prehistoric religion definition is the religious practice of prehistoric cultures. Prehistory, the period before written records makes up the bulk of human experience. Prehistory, the period before written records. Say that again. Prehistory, the period before written records, makes up the bulk of human experience. So it's a lot of prehistory that was before written records. Over 99% of human experience occurred during the Paleolithic period alone. That's a lot of time. So the Paleolithic period, also called the Old Stone Age, is a period in human prehistory that is distinguished by the original development of stone tools and which represents almost the entire period of human prehistoric technology. Now, let me click over there. And let me read that again. The Paleolithic or Paleolithic $3.3 million or 11,700 years ago, also called the Old Stone Age, from ancient Greek, old and litho stone, is a period in human prehistory that is distinguished by the original development of stone tools, and which represents almost the entire period of human prehistoric technology. It extends from the earliest known use of stone tools by hominins 3.3 million years ago to the end of the Pleistocene, around 11 to 11,650. Now, when you say Pleistocene, and put the cursor on it, I want you to see what it's talking about. Is the geological epoch that lasted from 2.58 million to 11,700 years ago, spanning the Earth's most recent period of repeated glaciations. Make sure you don't forget, this is talking about the geological. Before a change was finally confirmed in 2009 by the International Union of Geological Sciences. So we talking about the Pleistocene. So involved in this Paleolithic, is the Pleistocene. Now, the Paleolithic age in Europe preceded the Mesolithic age. And then what's the Mesolithic age? Or Middle Stone Age is the old world archaeological period between the Upper Paleolithic and the Neolithic. The term Epipaleolithic is often used synonymously, especially for outside Northern Europe and for the corresponding period in the Levant and Caucasus. Okay? And said, although the date of the transition varies geographically by several thousand years. So, see, it's a lot of stuff geologically going on the earth. There's a lot of geological things that that's not necessarily about human, but it's about the earth. So geologically, the history of the earth, there's a lot of changes that are going on the earth. By several thousand years, okay. During the Paleolithic age, hominins grouped together in small societies such as bands and subsisted by gathering plants, fishing, and hunting or scavenging wild animals. The Paleolithic age is characterized by the use of knapped stone tools. Although at the time humans also used wood and bone tools, other organic commodities were adapted for use as tools, including leather and vegetable fibers. However, due to rapid decomposition, these have not survived to any great degree. It said after about 50,000 years ago, a marked increase in the diversity of artifacts occurred. In Africa, bone artifacts in the first ark appeared in the archaeological record. The first evidence of human fishing is also noted from artifacts in places such as Blombos Cave in South Africa. Archaeologists classify artifacts of the last 50,000 years into many different categories such as projectile points, engraving tools, sharp knife blades, and drilling and piercing tools. And so humankind gradually evolved from early members of the genus Homo, such as Homo habilis, who used simple stone tools, into anatomically modern humans, as well as behaviorally modern humans, by the Upper Paleolithic, during the end of the Paleolithic age. Specifically, the Middle or Upper Paleolithic age, humans began to produce the earliest works of art and to engage in religious or spiritual behaviors such as burial and ritual. Conditions during the Paleolithic age went through a set of glacial and interglacial periods in which the climate periodically fluctuated between warm and cool temperatures. All right. By 50,000, 40,000 BP, the first humans set foot in Australia. By 45,000 BP, humans lived at 61 degrees north latitude in Europe. By 30,000 BP, Japan was reached, and by 27 BP, humans were present in Siberia, above the Arctic Circle. By the end of the Upper Paleolithic age, humans had crossed Beringia and expanded through the American continents. So, all right, let me click back over. So, prehistoric culture spanned the globe and existed for over 2.5 million years. Their religious practices were many and varied, and the study of them is difficult due to the lack of written records describing the details of their faith. All right? What time is it? Okay. Okay, yeah. I'm going to read this part and then we're going to cut it off. The cognitive capacity for religion likely first emerged in Homo sapiens or anatomically modern humans, although some scholars posit the existence of Neanderthal religion and sparse evidence exists for earlier ritual practice, excluding sparse and controversial evidence in the Middle Paleolithic, 300,000 to 50,000 years ago. Religion emerged with certainty in the Upper Paleolithic around 50,000 years ago. Upper Paleolithic religion was possibly shamanic. Shamanism is a spiritual practice that involves a practitioner shaman interacting with the spirit world through altered states of consciousness such as trance. The goal of this is usually to direct spirits or spiritual energies into the physical world for the purpose of healing, divination, or to aid. All right. Now, oriented around the phenomenon of special spiritual leaders enter trance states to receive esoteric spiritual knowledge. These practices are extrapolated based on the rich and complex body of art left behind by Paleolithic artists, particularly the elaborate cave art and enigmatic Venus figurines they produced. All right, the Neolithic Revolution, which established agriculture as the dominant lifestyle, occurred around 12,000 BC and ushered in the Neolithic. Neolithic society grew hierarchical and inegalitarian compared to its Paleolithic forebears, and their religious practices likely changed to suit. Neolithic religion may have become more structural and centralized than in the Paleolithic, and possibly engaged in ancestor worship, both of one's individual ancestors and of the ancestors of entire groups, tribes, and settlements. One famous feature of Neolithic religion were the stone circles of the British Isles, of which the best known today is Stonehenge, a particularly well-known area of late Neolithic through Chalcolithic. Now, remember we were talking about that Chalcolithic was an archaeological period characterized by the increasing use of smelted copper. It followed the Neolithic and preceded the Bronze Age. It occurred at different periods in different areas, but was absent in some parts of the world, such as Russia, where there was no well-defined, but we talking about this Chalcolithic. So, Chalcolithic religion is Proto-Indo-European mythology, the religion of the people who first spoke the Proto-Indo-European language, which has been partially reconstructed through shared religious elements between early Indo-European language speakers. Now, Bronze Age and Iron Age religions are understood in part through archaeological records, but also more so than Paleolithic and Neolithic, through written records. Some societies had writing in these ages and were able to describe those which did not. These eras of prehistoric religions see particular cultural focus today by modern reconstructionists with many pagan faiths today, based on the pre-Christian practices of proto-historic Bronze and Iron Age society. All right, now let's go over here to polytheistic, and we're gonna touch base on all right. Polytheism is the belief in or worship of more than one God. According to Oxford Reference, it is not easy to count gods, and so not always obvious whether an apparently polytheistic religion such as Chinese folk religions is really so, or whether the apparent different objects of worship are to be thought of as manifestation of a singular divinity. Polytheistic belief is usually assembled into a pantheon of gods and goddesses along with their own religious sects and rituals. Polytheism is a type of theism. Within theism, it contrasts with monotheism, the belief in a singular God who is in most cases transcendent. In religions that accept polytheism, the different gods and goddesses may be representations of forces of nature or ancestral principles. They can be viewed either as autonomous or as aspects of emanations of a creator deity or transcendental absolute principle, monistic theology, which manifests immanently in nature, panentheistic and pantheistic theologies. Polytheists do not always worship all the gods equally. They can be in monolatrous or Enotheists specialize in the worship of one particular deity only, or at certain times, respectively. And the recognition of the existence of multiple gods and goddesses does not necessarily equate to the worship of all the deities of one or more pantheons, as the believer can either worship them as a whole or concentrate only on a specific group of deities determined by various conditions such as the believer's occupation, taste, personal experience, family tradition, etc. It is also possible to worship a single deity considered supreme without ruling out the existence of other gods. This religious position has been called henotheism, but some prefer to call it monolatry. Although the term henotheism is controversial, it is recognized by scholars that the worship of a single God accompanied by belief in other deities maintains the principle of polytheism. Polytheism was the typical form of religion before the development and spread of the Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which enforce monotheism. However, there are still some dualistic aspects such as Satan and polytheistic aspects such as saints. Saint Bridget is in fact Bridget, the main goddess of Celtic Ireland. It is well documented throughout history, from prehistory and the earliest records of ancient Egyptian religion and ancient Mesopotamian religion to the religions prevalent during classical antiquity, such as ancient Greek religion in ancient Roman religion and in ethnic religions such as Germanic, Slavic, and Baltic paganism, and Native American religions. Notable polytheistic religions practiced today include Taoism, Shintoism, or Chinese folk religion, Shinto, Shintoria, most traditional African religions, and various neo-pagan faiths such as Wicca and Hellenism, modern religion. Now, Hinduism, while popularly held as polytheistic by many scholars, cannot be exclusively characterized as such, as some Hindus consider themselves to be pantheists, panentheists, henotheists, polymorphists, monotheists, or monists. Hinduism does not have a single book. Hinduism is an umbrella term for a collection of ideologies. They are compatible with Hindu texts, since there exists no consensus of standardization in the faith. Vedanta, the most dominant school of Hinduism, offers a combination of pantheism, panentheism, and polytheism, holding that Brahman is the sole ultimate reality of the universe. Yet unity with it can be reached by worshiping the innumerable deities that represent the supreme absolute truth. Hindus who practice bhakti ultimately believe in one God who is known variously as Paramatman, Parabrahman, Bhagavan, Ishvara, and so on. That transcends all categories, both of form and formless. However, the common people who remain unaware of these concepts worship their deities as ultimate God. Different regions can have their own local deities whose worship is restricted to that region. Brahman, a personification of the concept of Moksha, and the different gods are paths to Moksha or realizing the Brahman. Alright, so that's polytheism. Now let's touch on this animism. We're going to touch on shamanism for a minute, and then we're going to go to animism. Then Alright, so shamanism. Shamanism is a spiritual practice that involves a practitioner, shaman, interacting with the spirit world through altered states of consciousness, such as trance. The goal of this is usually to direct spirits or spiritual energies into the physical world for the purpose of healing, divination, or to aid human beings in some other way. Beliefs and practices characterized as shamanic have attracted the interest of scholars from a variety of disciplines, including anthropologists, archaeologists, historians, religious studies scholars, philosophers, and psychologists. Hundreds of books and academic papers on the subject have been produced, with a peer-reviewed academic journal being devoted to the study of shamanism. Alright, so they're talking about the terminology of the word, but we just want to touch on shamanism so we know it's a spiritual practice that involves a practitioner, shaman, interacting with the spirit world through altered states of consciousness such as trance. And now, let's not forget. Now, when you see this shamanism in this altered state of consciousness in a trance, don't forget about the Kardecist spiritism, also known as spiritism or Kardechism. Is a reincarnationist and spiritualist doctrine established in France in the mid-19th century by writer and educator Hippolyte Leon Denizard Rivali, known by his pen name Allan Kardec, considered his doctrine derived from a Christian perspective. He described a cycle by which a spirit supposedly returned to material existence after the death of the body in which it had dwelled, as well as the evolution it undergoes during this process. Kardechism emerged as a new religious movement in tandem with spiritualism. The notions and practices associated with spiritual communication have been disseminated throughout North America and Europe since the 1850s. And said that Kardec coined the term spiritism in 1857 and defined it as the doctrine founded on the existence, manifestation, and teachings of spirits. Kardec claimed that spiritism combines scientific, philosophical, and religious aspects of the tangible universe in what he described as the universe beyond transcendence. After observing table turning, a kind of seance, he was intrigued that the table seemed to move despite lacking muscles, and that the table seemed to provide answers without having a brain. The spiritists claim being it is not the table that thinks, it is us, the souls of the men who have lived on earth. Kardec also focused his attention on a variety of other paranormal claims such as incorporation and mediumship. All right, let me see. Now, what they call a mediumship. So, some of the things that people be trying, you'll call a scam, because this stuff about a medium and the shaman, and then in shamanism you had this altered state of consciousness, and then you got this trance, talking about a seance and all this other stuff. So now, let's go over to animism. So we over here on animism. But like I said, when we talk about the shaman, don't even forget about this Kardec spiritism. Because see, people been in contact with each other and trying to scam people. And you know, that's what that is. That's what that spiritism, that Kardec, whatever, it ain't nothing but a scam. Mediums and all, just like the occult. It's a scam. Because all you did was took polytheism that people have been practicing for years. For years. And distorted polytheism with this occult mess. Because all that occult stuff, all that pagan stuff, is nothing but, you know, it's a lie. You try to use violence. That's what the pagan try to do. You try to use violence. And then talking about some reconstructionists. And what was neo-pagan, doing the same thing. All you're doing is taking, when the archaeologists and the people in behavior science, as well as theology, and DNA, and all the scientists, geological information, all you're doing is taking information and distorting it. You're a criminal through violence. And see, we live in a day and time where we have law enforcement all over the world. You got, everywhere you go, you got some kind of law enforcement. So what people got away with in the past, with violence, now everybody don't live in the United States of America. But still, we live in a day and time where people have a concept of crime and punishment. Well, people have law. We have law. Yeah, international law. Yeah, national law, regional law, so on and so forth. Like I say, everybody don't live in the United States of America. But we live in a day and time. You got the United Nations, and then you got regional governments as well, organizations. So we don't live in it like we today. People all over the world, we don't live like we did in the past. We try to deter crime. So when it comes to people committing crimes, trying to get away with not being punished for the crime, that's the reason why. But don't even think for 1 minute that the pagans, because what they did in the past, like martyrdom, for example, they can't get away with that today. They can't get away with that today. Just like when we talking about, matter of fact, while we talking about martyrdom, when Constantine was on the throne, did you see the pagans try to? Constantine was the emperor, and what he said go. Did anybody rebel against Constantine? That's what we talking about. And say, the hell with Constantine. We're going to continue to martyr these Christians, these Catholics, and these Jews. We ain't going to never stop. The hell with what Constantine. No, nobody said that. Because they going to get killed. You weren't going to rebel against the emperor. You weren't going to rebel against the emperor. When the emperor said, hey, that's the end of martyrdom. So that's, you can't get away with it. You couldn't get away with it. And that's what we're talking about. See, today, the pagan can't get away with being violent in such a way. And see, one thing we don't need to never not say, when we was talking about the Indo-European, see, you commit crimes against the Europeans with this pagan stuff. See, you try to use force You tried to see, you took polytheism, which really was a well accepted practice. A well accepted practice. So you took it and distorted it with pagan. That's what you did. And then with this reason stuff, this Greek reasoning, wasn't no basis for that. But this is what you did on your own. And then out of that, you come to this atheist stuff. So don't make it sound like people didn't force me. That's what they did. Because when you made that mess up, how many people resisted? How many people didn't want to listen to what you say? And when they didn't want to listen to you, what happened to them people? What did you do to them people? As well as the people who wanted to disprove and wanted to prove that what you was doing, what you was saying was wrong. But see, we live in a day and time you can't get away with that. What time is it? Okay. About 10 more minutes, I'm going to cut it off. It'll still be 2 hours. But see, I know that when I started my video thing, but we still talking about what I talked about last week. We still on it, and we touched base on it. So we was able to establish the direction of this atheist mess, as well as this philosophy, reason based on reason. So we're gonna take, before I end today's video, we're gonna go into animism. Animism is the belief that objects, places, and creatures all possess a distinct spiritual essence. Animism perceives that all things, animals, plants, rocks, rivers, weather, systems, human handiwork, and in some cases words, as being animated, having agency and free will. Animism is used in anthropology of religion as a term for the belief system of many indigenous peoples. In contrast to the relatively more recent development of organized religions, animism is a metaphysical belief which focuses on the supernatural universe, specifically on the concept of the immaterial soul. Although each culture has its own mythologies and rituals, animism is said to describe the most common foundational thread of indigenous peoples, spiritual or supernatural perspectives. The animistic perspective is so widely held and inherent to most indigenous people that they often do not even have a word in their languages that corresponds to animism or even religion. The term animism is an anthropological construct, largely due to such ethno-linguistic and cultural discrepancies. Opinions differ on whether animism refers to an ancestral mode of experience common to indigenous peoples around the world or to a full-fledged religion in its own right. The currently accepted definition of animism was only developed in the late 19th century, 1871, by Edward Tyler. It is one of anthropology's earliest concepts, is not the first. Animism encompasses the belief that all material phenomena have agency, that there exists no categorical distinction between the spiritual and physical world, and that soul, spirit, or sentience exists not only in humans but also in other animals, plants, rocks, geographic features such as mountains and rivers and other entities, other natural environment. Examples include water, sprites, vegetation, deities. Okay. And free spirits. Among others. Animism may further attribute a life force to abstract concepts such as words, true names, or metaphors in mythology. Some members of the non-tribal world also consider themselves animists, such as author Daniel Quinn, sculptor Lawson Oyekin, and many contemporary pagans. And then you had this contemporary pagans. Alright, then etymology. Then you got old animism definition. Then you got new animism, non-archaic definition. Postmodern anthropology. Okay. What time is it? Okay. We're gonna stop right there, but we're gonna come back on this. So I got a few minutes, but it'll be 2 hours. So on today's video, it'll be about 2 hours, maybe a minute or so. But I'm gonna go ahead and cut off. But before I end today's video, I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Son of God, for all the blessings and guidance that He provides us all with, and continue to pray that we have peace and end all these wars, and continue to pray about these natural disasters, because we know that natural disasters are just that, disasters, and they happen naturally. And we have all these modern buildings and modern product things that we as humans produce, and we know that natural disasters happen, tornadoes, hurricanes, just like it was just been wintertime, blizzards happen, and then it's going to be summertime. The summer comes, a drought. It can be so hot that the water evaporates. We all don't live in the same area around the world. We don't all live. So when you say drought, here it is. In the United States of America, we got running water and things, but still, the water underground can run out, because a lot of cities, use underground water, and when the water run out, where you gonna get your water from? You know, so it's a serious thing. If you don't have no rain, if you don't get no rain, and because when it rains, the water hits the ground, then it goes into the ground. If it don't rain, where you gonna get water from? That's drinkable. Because we got to deal with pollution, ground pollution, air pollution, water pollution, as well as sound pollution. We got to deal with pollution. But still, we need water. We need water. You ever think about that when you talk about remember we were talking about I was thinking about that the other day. We were talking about in the Paleolithic and how human beings, and we were talking about the hunter-gatherers and even before the agriculture. But did you ever, when we were talking about belief, when you think about the hunter-gatherer, was it anything that people like say, hey, that I can't eat. I can't eat that. Because think about the hunter-gatherer been around for a long period of time. They were hunting and gathering. Is there anything that suggests that based on your belief, when you was out hunting and gathering, that right there, based on my belief, don't eat that. Don't eat that. Now we know that human beings been around a long time, so I know in your mind you ain't gonna say that humans didn't need no water. But humans needed water. When you walking around hunting and gathering, I guarantee somebody gonna get thirsty. Somebody gonna get thirsty, gonna need some water. You gonna need some water. Walking around hunting and gathering, you gonna need some water eventually. But thinking about that, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things I thought, but I thought about that. Like water. We can't put this in our mind because remember we were talking about geology. We can't think about the earth that way. We got to look at the Paleolithic period. The earth wasn't like it is today. So when it comes to water, see they were talking about how people had stone tools. So where you find water at? See, that's part of hunting and gathering. Not only was you hunting for food, but what else you were looking for? Water. And where see, that's important. Person might die if they ain't do what? If I don't get no water. Because think about it, you walking around possibly and then talking about hunting. You weren't just walking. And let's not forget one thing about this time period. All these creatures. You were probably trying to survive, trying to keep from being eaten. Let's don't forget that. Let's don't forget that the creatures, they ate human beings. And you tried to run and tried to hide from creatures that'll kill you for food. But you had to find water. So that might have took them time. And then think about day and night. The earth wasn't like it is today. We don't even know how long the sun was up. Or how the earth spun or whatever. How long a day was. How long was light. Everybody live in the same. And then we don't forget, this coming out of Africa. See, the earth wasn't the same. This is what they were talking about, the Pleistocene. That's what they were talking about, the Pleistocene, the earth, and then they were talking about the glaciers. See this whole thing. And so when it comes to what you believe, you can't take for granted a whole lot of human history. 99.9% was during the Paleolithic period, prehistory. Before you started learning how to write. Before human beings started writing. All this artwork on the caves and things like that. And then what's this cave stuff? Not just artwork, but what's this cave? What you doing? What else was you doing in the cave? Then you look at the surrounding areas. You see a cave. Look around the cave. This is where human beings live. What else you find outside the cave? You see the water? You see the water around the cave? Ask that question. Just think about it. You say they found artwork in the cave, but ask this question. Okay, inside the cave, did you find water? Then outside the cave, did you find water? Look at the surrounding area where they find artwork and ask yourself, how long did it take somebody to get to this area with this artwork inside the cave? Do you see in the water? Do you see water? But think about it. That's a good question to ask, because the hunter-gatherers, it took some time for you to get to that area. And somebody put some art. So what you saying? The people just actually lived in the cave? See, that's an important thing to look at when you talk about cave art. And then, was it any animals? You see any animals around this cave? Because the hunter-gatherers, they had to go hunt and gather. You see the trees, any grass? See any birds flying around? See, these are things that are important. Because you're talking about what people believe. Most likely polytheistic. They already said no, but people polytheistic. They had various beliefs. And we ain't finna get into childbearing and sex and all, hey, we ain't got to go there. Because we hear though, just to answer your question, you see we hear, don't you? Shoot. That'll answer that question, right quick. You see we hear, don't you? Shoot. So you ain't got to spend too much time on that one. We hear. Shoot. But we think about hunter-gatherers, just like we talking about the cave, the environment around the cave, the environment inside the cave. And when caves everywhere, caves were not everywhere, So, these things are things to think about. So I'm going to get ready to end today's video. And, still working on this idea, man. Because I know during the weekdays sometimes, listen to the radio. And then, talking about the blues, folk music, blues, and whatever, and all the subgenre from blues and like, Memphis blues, Chicago blues, West Coast blues, and then they got, I think on the East Coast they had something like what Piedmont blues, the certain style of picking the guitar all up and down the East Coast, Piedmont blues. Then you had Texas blues, and a lot of people moved from the South, like from Memphis, and then went up to Chicago blues. But we don't jazz, and then you got ragtime, boogie woogie, swing, like jump blues. And then you come into like country blues, whatever that But R&B, soul music. 'Cause what blues and soul music ain't too far away from each other. Sam Cooke invented, soul music. And then, Willie Dixon, he wrote a lot of blues music. And so Sam Cooke sang a lot of songs that were written by Willie Dixon. For example, My Little Red Rooster. You know, Sam Cooke sang that. Well, who wrote it? Willie Dixon wrote it. He wrote it, but Sam Cooke sang it. You know. So when it comes to blues, soul, you know, not too much of a difference, you know. But then you come into like disco and funk, and so on and so forth. But one thing, you know, like what time is it? Oh, it's 4 something. Cause like here in the city of Memphis, like one of the local radio stations, like WDI, it's the first radio station that was owned by African American, you know, black/African American. Some people say black, some people say African American, you know. And AM radio station, been around since 1940, I think, 1940 something. But you know, they play the blues all day on Saturday, and then today being Sunday, you know, today's Sunday, and then at 5 o'clock they gonna play gospel. But is it, you know, these things are important, you know, and so gonna continue, you know, to work on these things, and ain't gonna always be like this, but you know, you gotta start somewhere. You gotta have a start somewhere. You know, you gotta have first. You gotta have an idea. You know, just like everything else, you gotta have an idea, and then from that idea, you gotta keep working toward until you come to a realization. You know, but we're gonna get there. It's in the works. So. But first, to start, you gotta have an idea. You know what I'm saying? You gotta have an idea, and then go from there. So I'm gonna get ready to end today's video. Again, my name is Eric D. Johnson, also known as BrightShine. We are here in the city of Memphis, in the county sheriff of the state of Tennessee. And thank all my family, my support for your continued care and support, and continue to pray. Continue to pray. Until next time, take care of yourself, which each and one of you very best.